Just south of Chicago, the water looks calm. Then, a boat engine cuts through the silence, and the surface explodes. Fish leap by the dozens, some crashing straight into the boat, striking anglers in the chest, the face, the arms. For years, people who live along this stretch of river learned to duck before they learned to fish. But this isn't a horror story. It's a $18 million a year problem. Every single year, the U.S. government spends that much trying to stop one invader from reaching the Great Lakes. Electric barriers hum beneath the water. Boats patrol day and night. Sonar scans the depths for shapes that shouldn't be there. And yet, despite the money, despite the technology, despite years of effort, something strange keeps happening. The fish keep finding a way. Scientists say total control should have been possible by now. It hasn't. So what is this creature that jumps out of rivers and refuses to be stopped? And why, after nearly 2 decades of fighting it, are researchers starting to ask a very different question? Not how to destroy it, but whether they ever truly understood what they were dealing with in the first place. The Illinois River winds south from Chicago, feeding into the Mississippi. For decades, it was just another Midwestern waterway. Barges, fishermen, quiet mornings. Then, in the late 1990s, something changed. Commercial fishermen started pulling up nets heavier than anything they'd seen before. Not with catfish, not with bass, with a fish nobody remembered stalking. Silver, thick-bodied, and strangely nervous, it reacted to boat engines like nothing native ever had. At first, locals thought it was a fluke, a strange year. Maybe flooding brought them in. But the numbers didn't stop. They multiplied. Ranger Tom Whitlock, who patrolled these waters for 12 years, remembers the first time he saw a school scatter. It looked like the river was boiling, he said. Except it wasn't heat. It was fear. Every boat that passed triggered the same reaction. Fish rocketing into the air, some clearing 6 feet, slamming into hulls, into people, into anything in their path. Injuries started getting reported. Cracked ribs, broken noses. One water skier knocked unconscious mid-run. Local news treated it as a strange curiosity at first. A weird river story, nothing more. But wildlife biologists downstream were watching something far more troubling. Native fish populations, the ones that had lived in these waters for generations, were vanishing. Not slowly, fast. In some survey sites, up to 95% of the biomass was now this one species. And the closer researchers looked, the more unsettling their data became. Because this fish wasn't just replacing native species. It was outcompeting them for food, oxygen, and space at a speed nobody had modeled before. Something had entered these waters that shouldn't have been there. And it was heading somewhere far more dangerous than anyone expected. Word of the jumping fish reached federal agencies faster than anyone expected, because the river these fish were traveling through led somewhere critical, Lake Michigan, and beyond it, the entire Great Lakes system, a $7 billion fishing industry, and drinking water for over 30 million people. Biologist Mark Ferrandi was one of the first researchers sent to investigate. When we ran the projections, he said, we didn't like what came back. If the fish reached the lakes, there might be no undoing it. So the government did something drastic. They built an electric barrier across the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. the only water route connecting the two river systems. Underwater cables, pulsing current, strong enough to stun a fish mid-swim. For a while, it seemed to work. Then, in 2010, a single fish was found 6 miles past the barrier, alive. Researchers didn't understand how it happened. The barrier was functioning. The voltage was correct. Some suspected barges were carrying them through undetected, hidden in ballast water or debris. Others had a stranger theory that during high water events, the fish might be swimming through areas the barrier wasn't fully covering. Nobody could confirm it. Then came a discovery that worried scientists even more. DNA testing of water samples, a method that detects genetic material fish leave behind, showed traces of the species past the barrier multiple times, yet no physical fish were caught, which left researchers with an unsettling question. Were the fish getting through undetected? Or was something about this species smarter and more resilient than anyone had accounted for? The Army Corps of Engineers doubled down. More barriers, more monitoring stations, more boats running constant patrols along the canal. The budget climbed past $18 million a year. And still, the DNA traces kept appearing past the barrier. Researchers began pulling water samples weekly instead of monthly. Testing labs ran around the clock. Then, in 2017, a commercial fisherman working just 9 miles from Lake Michigan radioed in something urgent. He'd pulled up a live specimen inside the protected zone, past every barrier, past every checkpoint. Biologist Mark Ferranti remembers getting the call. "My stomach dropped," he said. That fish had no business being there. An emergency response team was deployed within hours. Rotenone, a chemical used to stun fish for capture, was applied to a 6-mile stretch of water. Thousands of native fish surfaced, stunned, gasping. But only one of the invasive species was found. Just one, which raised a chilling possibility. If one fish could get that close to the lake undetected, how many others already had? Researchers began re-examining years of old sonar footage, water samples, and boat strike reports. And what they found didn't just complicate the story, it rewrote it. Because buried in years-old data was a pattern nobody had flagged before. The fish weren't just slipping past barriers by accident. Their movement matched something else entirely, something tied to water levels, lock operations, and barge traffic schedules, as if the species had learned the rhythm of the very system built to stop it. Nobody wanted to say it out loud. But the evidence was starting to point toward a possibility far more unsettling than a leaky barrier. The answer, when it finally came, wasn't about intelligence at all. It was about something researchers had overlooked from the very beginning: locks. Every time a barge passed through the canal system, massive lock chambers opened to raise or lower water levels. For a few minutes at a time, the electric barrier's protective zone became unreliable. Currents shifted, water mixed, and small gaps in coverage opened up. Fish don't understand engineering, but they understand turbulence. They understand disturbed water. And barge traffic created exactly that on a predictable schedule, multiple times a day. Biologist Mark Ferranti called it an accidental invitation. "We built one of the most advanced barriers in the world," he said, "and then we opened the door for it every single day without realizing it." Worse, researchers discovered these fish could survive in surprisingly poor conditions: low oxygen, high turbidity, cold temperatures most native species couldn't tolerate. They weren't unusually clever. They were simply built for exactly the kind of environment humans had engineered around them. Canals, locks, slow-moving industrial waterways. The very infrastructure meant to connect Chicago's shipping industry to the rest of the country had created a perfect corridor for the species to advance, one lock cycle at a time. It wasn't a flaw in nature. It was a flaw in design. And once that connection was confirmed, researchers realized something far more disturbing. If barge schedules were the real vulnerability, then stopping this species wasn't just a biology problem anymore. It was an economic one, because shutting down lock traffic, even briefly, meant shutting down a shipping corridor worth billions of dollars a year. The question was no longer just how to stop the fish. It was whether the country was willing to pay the real price of doing it. In the end, nobody shut down the locks. The shipping industry was too vital, too deeply woven into the region's economy, to pause even briefly. Instead, engineers went back to the drawing board. A second, stronger barrier was added downstream. Underwater speakers were installed, blasting sound frequencies designed to repel the fish without harming other wildlife. Bubble curtains were tested next. Walls of rising air meant to disorient any fish attempting to pass through during lock cycles. Slowly, the traces of DNA past the barrier began to drop, not to zero, but close enough that researchers allowed themselves a cautious kind of relief. Ranger Tom Whitlock, who had watched this fight unfold for over a decade, put it simply, "We didn't win," he said. "We just stopped losing as fast." Meanwhile, downstream, communities adapted in ways nobody predicted. Some towns began hosting fishing tournaments built entirely around catching the invaders, turning an $18 million problem into a strange kind of local tradition. Restaurants started serving them. Processing plants opened. An unwanted fish slowly became an unlikely source of jobs. But upstream, near the barrier, the tension never fully disappeared. Every barge that passes still opens a brief window. Every lock cycle still stirs the water. And every year, researchers still find a few traces they can't fully explain. The truth is, this fight was never really about one fish. It was about what happens when human engineering reshapes nature faster than anyone can predict the consequences. The Great Lakes are still standing, for now, but somewhere along that canal, in the churn behind a passing barge, the next test is already underway. If this story pulled you in, subscribe, because the next hidden crisis is already unfolding somewhere in the water.